Welcome to the Global Impact Conference hosted by ISTE community leaders. My name is Cavwell Edwards, and I am a professor at Community College of Allegheny County. And today, my topic that I will be presenting on is network hacks, computer network security in the age of artificial intelligence. In this presentation, we will discuss some of the pedagogical best practices for integrating artificial intelligence into your computer courses, more specifically, computer networking courses. For this session, we will be covering several agenda items: AI in higher education, artificial intelligence framework for integration into education, generative AI guidelines for the computer network classroom. So we'll be talking about some of the practices that I integrate into my class and aligning AI use with the curriculum. Some of the main things that we will be talking about, and we will start off by looking at the reason we would want to use artificial intelligence in our classes. More so, in terms of some of the areas that I cover in my classes, we looked on some of the best practices to align the artificial intelligence tool to industry requirements where employment is concerned. We will later talk about the framework that we use for this research and some of the things that we have seen in terms of improvements as we continue to use these artificial intelligence tools. AI will take my job. Have you ever wondered if this will happen to you? Are you one of those individuals who possibly are hesitant to use artificial intelligence because you believe that it will compete with you for your employment? My response to you is that you will not be replaced, but you need to embrace the artificial intelligence tool. This is one of the recommendation and the practices that I use in my class with my students. Often people will believe that if they avoid it enough, it will go away. And that is not true where artificial intelligence is concerned. We see some of the industry benefits of the artificial intelligence tools that are available to us, and these can be seen from different industries. So not only in higher education. So we see in marketing, we see in sales, we see in social media posts, and more specifically, we talk about social media marketing and some of the increases there. We also see the integration of artificial intelligence tools in our higher education classrooms. One of the reasons we see this is primarily because we are preparing students for industry where they will be using these tools, but also we need to embrace it as educators because it can help us to do our jobs more efficiently. In some ways, you will see in terms of some of the curriculum items that I cover and how we can utilize the tools to better improve for better improvement in our work. I will caution you by saying not all artificial intelligence tools and resources can benefit you in your classroom. So there are some challenges that you might find in terms of some of the tools that you will want to use. Now, this is not to put a blanket statement to say that the tools are not already developed. There are some tools that are developed and can be used in your classroom to efficiently support your teaching. What can you expect from the integration of artificial intelligence tools, you might ask? And this is one of the area that we will talk about in terms of some of the benefits that we will see. There are also some challenges, and we will talk about some of them as well as we talk about the areas that I use it in my class. And the class that I will be talking about is my computer networking course, where we use the artificial intelligence tool for configuration and to test our security settings. The area that I teach in, it is a technology focused program. and my department is the Computer Information Technology department. So we are preparing students to enter the technical fields in industry. Now, our primary goal is to align these students to all the tools required for them to be successful in their jobs when they start, but also to align these courses and content that we cover so the students are better prepared to enter the workforce. So these are some of the things that we look on in terms of the tools that we are using now. It is a virtual setup, but will students actually be learning the skills required for the jobs that they will be completing? And by doing so, we're adding value to the education by integrating these tools. So primarily we are using emerging technologies, and some might categorize it as disruptive technologies because of just how new some of these skills are, and they will continue to improve, and we will continue to get better at integrating them and embracing them. So, to give you an overview of the approach taken, in terms of the framework that we are using for this study, we are basing our content and our approach to this research and to this practice on the development ops or net development ops approach that is taken for software development. And we are using this approach to influence infrastructure. So I will break down to you in um, a minute or so in terms of comparing the two areas. So, in terms of IT, there are different umbrella areas that you can be working under or teaching under. And the two primary ones that I will talk about will be development, which you might hear as software development or applications development. And then you have infrastructure, which would be your physical systems, so your network infrastructure, your systems, which are your servers, and you will have your cabling and so forth. So my area that I will be using the approach and the introduction of the artificial intelligence tool will be the infrastructure area. And if you see from the if you have ever seen a software development life cycle, you will know that there are some key areas that need to be completed before you can actually put the software or the application into production. The same can be applied when we look at configuration for our infrastructure systems. Now, you will need to have your design phase, you will do your deployment, you will do your testing, and the software will be in operation. Now, if you are familiar with project management as well, you will know that there are different approaches or methods that can be used. Now, you have the waterfall, which some would consider the older method of doing project management. And generally, you would be completing one task, then you complete the other task. And most times, you will not be returning, you will just go through the full cycle. Then we have a more recent approach, the agile project management method, and you are using your, say, for example, design. Then you go creating your prototype, and then you go do your testing. But when you get to your testing, you realize that there are some issues. So you go back to design or you go back to the prototype and then you do the modifications. So in taking that approach, you are constantly touching the different cycles. So if you look on the diagram on your screen here, you will notice that we can go into design, we can go into the deployment, which is the continuous delivery of your device or of your software. So we're looking at it from both sides. And you go into your testing, which you're doing your quality assurance, and you continue to do this. And then you will go into your operation. So you are continuously monitoring the systems and so forth. So we use this model and apply it to a networking approach, right? So that is why I would describe this as an infrastructure as code because we're using a coding framework for our infrastructure deployment and integration. And here you will see a little bit more of an explanation in terms of some of the applications or different systems that can be used for this project and for this research that we are doing for my class. We are using two general tools for our AI tools that we are integrating, and we are looking at PyATS, which we use in a virtual setup. So we use a Linux setup for this. And we have the Genie library that we add here as well. So with these two, we will do our configuration and we will do our testing before we actually do deployment on our systems. For this presentation, I will be showing some of the screen capture that we have in terms of things that we can retrieve from the virtual environment setup. And these are actual coding that you can, or configuration that you can do on the Cisco switches and routers as well. So in our environment, we're using Cisco and the framework is from Cisco. So we will be using the devices that are aligning with the industry products that we would be using here. Right. The last part here that I will cover, and then we will go into some of the actual policies and approaches that I use in my class in terms of the integration. So with our PyATS and Genie library, we are doing a testing automation framework, and we are using this in a way that you can capture all the logs and all the information from your devices as you're doing your setup. So students will be able to build out a full network that is operational. And this system has been tested, as I mentioned, in terms of the software development area. So we have been seeing different white papers and different publications using this framework, testing this framework, proving it, tweaking it, and so forth. So it is new to infrastructure or to networking, but it is not a new framework. So we are at least using a benchmark that has been tested in another area that can be applied to the infrastructure area. So these are some of the main areas that I wanted to touch on, and then we will talk a little bit more specifically about how I use the tools in my class and some of the best practices. Now, if you think back to the first time you possibly heard about artificial intelligence or about AI, and some people might have only heard about it when they started hearing about ChatGPT in the news and in other publications. This is more recent, of course, but artificial intelligence is not new to IT or to the industry, not even to higher ed. But in terms of some of the challenges that we might find and some of the things that you might think of when you think of artificial intelligence, and I started off by saying AI will take my job or AI will replace me, and quite often you might have heard people say that. Most times we think of AI or ChatGPT as one form of AI, which is a generative AI. Most times people will think of it as a way that students will be using to cheat the system, and they will use it to complete their assignments, more so written assignments or their coding assignments and so forth, right? One of the approaches that I would recommend and what I use in terms of how I address some of the concerns with artificial intelligence in my classes is that I have a policy in place that students are aware of. And this policy is on your screen where I say we may use AI tools such as ChatGPT and others during our class. The students will be informed of when, where, and how these tools will be used. In doing so, we are allowing students to use the tools, but in a more controlled environment. There are several benefits to doing this, and some of them you might have been aware of or you might have heard before. But the main benefits that I would say is that the students are no longer hiding to use the tools, so they see value in it. They're not seeing it as a way of getting around the system. Additionally, these tools are being, or some of these tools, I should say, are being used in industry. So students are actually using the tools that are helping them in terms of what they are preparing to do as a job. They are being introduced to it now. This is helping them to create those best practices and best approaches to using the tool, preparing them to enter the workforce and to enter it with the skills that are required. Now, in terms of my area where I teach, it is a community college. So primarily we have students who are looking to move out of our program into the workforce. Now, we do have some students who are moving to four-year institutions, but the majority of our students would be moving from our program to the workforce. So our programming is designed for that. Now, in your institution, it might be a little bit different. So your approach to using the tools might be a little bit tailored, but you can use some of these best practices and some of these examples when you are thinking of the tools to use as well, right? So let's look at the differences in terms of what can you do with ChatGPT. So I will use this, and this is the source for this chart is UNESCO 2023, which was a report that showed how you can think of using ChatGPT. So does it matter if the output is true and you are analyzing your assignment or your task? If the answer is no, then it is safe to use ChatGPT because in terms of what you are looking at in the results when you put your prompt into ChatGPT, it is not information that you can verify immediately whether it's true or not. And if you're not so much concerned about the facts in terms of the information, then you can go ahead and use it. Right, so that's our first option. Now, if it is important that it is true, then you need to do a second check. So, is there an expectation that the work should be done on your own? Right? So, again, we're thinking of using these tools to support our work, to help us to be more efficient at our work, but not to do our work for us. So if the answer to that is yes, so there is an expectation that the work should be done on your own, then you are going to go to the point where it's unsafe to use ChatGPT because you will not want to use a tool to do the work for you. Now, if the response to that was no, then we would do an additional check and we would say, do you have the expertise, I'm sorry, to verify that the output is accurate? So are you able to check the sources? Are you able to verify that this information is actually the information that you need for your task to complete? Now, if the answer to that is no, then of course it's unsafe to use ChatGPT. But if the answer to that is yes, then you would do a final check. Are you able and willing to take full responsibility, so legally, morally, etc., for any missed inaccuracy, right? So if you present this information and later we find out that there are some misinformation, are you in a position or are you willing to take responsibility? If you are not, then do not use the tool. If you are, then you can use it. So we got to the point where it is possible to use Chat GPT. Now you can substitute Chat GPT for another AI tool, possibly one that you are considering, and you can use this chart to evaluate how best you can integrate that into your class. Now, this is a chart that you can share with your students like I do in terms of they can check to see whether or not they should be using an AI tool for the assignment or for the task that they're completing based on answering these four questions. All right. So I will leave that with you to consider and also to just to think of ways that you can modify this as well to use in your class for their students to benefit them the most. Okay. So we started off talking about artificial intelligence and we got to the point where we were talking about some of the networking tools. We talked about ChatGPT, which is one that often we hear of now because of just how quickly it grew and because it is one of the first publicly available artificial intelligence tools that we can actually use and see some of the benefits and also the challenges that come with it. Now, for us, in terms of generative AI, especially in higher education and in education in general, there are some nuances that we need to necessarily work through, but also we are doing information gathering, right? So we're still in that phase where some people are using it, some people are not, some people are considering it, but we are still gathering information and trying to figure out where do we go from here and how do we use it. So one of the things that I like to say in terms of how I share my information and how I gather information is that if we are doing data collection, collecting information on how we are using it, best practices, and so forth, it is beneficial to the community, to higher education, for us to share that information, whether by doing research and presenting the research, or by using it in our classes and sharing with other colleagues about how we use it and they too might use it. So these are some of the areas that we can help to grow the use of generative AI or AI in general in our classes. We can establish common use so we can have some best practices based on our departments or based on our school in general, so our educational institution. And we can develop a community of practice where we can have individuals who are thinking in terms of the same approaches and they can support each other and present so that others can learn and come on board and so forth. uh, the goal, I would say, in terms of, especially in my programming area, is that we have all our classes using some form of artificial intelligence, right? So that's our goal. And I'm sure it will materialize in some time, but at least it's a work in progress. So one of the other things that I would like to, so there are some positives, as I mentioned, and there are some negatives, and we want to at least over time create more positives. But in terms of the information that you use in any of these artificial intelligence tools, you want to make sure that it is not information that will compromise your personal identity or personal privacy or your organizational privacy. So, one of the best practices I would recommend is if you are using any of these tools, you want to create an account separate from your institutional account to use for the tool, and also whatever information you share in the tool, you want to make sure that information is not proprietary information and you're sharing information that you can now build on in order to use it as best as you would need to. Okay, so we want to remember that the accuracy of these systems are still being improved. So there are some things in terms of caution that you will need to take. All right. So this brings us to the section where I will talk more about how I am using the tool in my class and to see if there are any opportunities for you to use similar tools. For this presentation, I will be showing some screenshots of the configurations and some of the settings that we have from the virtual environment. I will have my contact information at the end of the presentation. And I do encourage you to reach out if you would like to learn a little bit more, but also if you would like us to connect to do a live demo. So in this presentation, because of some limitations that I had, it will not be a live demo. You will have some screenshots of the tool and some of the settings there. So the tool, as I mentioned earlier, is PyATS, and we use the Genie library in terms of doing the configuration on our networking devices. So in my computer networking class, we are using a virtual setup, and this will bring us to the section where you're seeing some of the screenshots and some of the configuration. So for anyone who is familiar with the Cisco devices, so Cisco switches, routers, you will know that we have two ways of doing our configuration. So first, we can do it through the web interface. and you can also do it through the command line interface. Now, there are some instances where after you have your configuration, you might need to tweak things quickly. And mainly that's how in my class and in industry that we use the web interface or the graphical user interface. In terms of our core configuration and main configuration approach, we use the command line interface. Okay. So on your screen, you will see some of the common commands that we use in the virtual environment. So after we do our configuration, we would be using some of these commands to pull information from the devices. And this is how we're testing to see that whatever we configured, if it will be working properly. So the first one, for example, you could do show interfaces and you will get the interface details. You could do the IP information, so you could do show IP interface as well, and that will provide you with some of the additional information there. When we do our setup, so we also create VLANs on the switches, so you will see some of that information as well. You can look for some of the protocols that are being used, right? So if you do, for example, the show IP protocols, you will see that information. You can also do the OSPF as well. So if you do show IP OSPF interface, you will see that information as well. Now we can also get the information for our routing table, and you will be able to do the tracing on your network as well using those commands. And these are just some additional ones that you will see. I have about two more slides that I will show you with additional information here. And you can go through in terms of once you are done with the configuration, you can save your log and the students can analyze the log. So that is one of the assignments that we have in our class where we do and we analyze the log and we can see some of the details. So we do that comparison. Now, in using ChatGPT, we can put some of the information. We create a company, so we can use a fake company name, right? And we are not putting any of our information from the college into the system. And then we can do some comparison in terms of doing so. Right? So here you have some more, and this should be the last slide with the information here to compare some of the settings that we have. Now, in terms of the class and some of the practices that we find to be beneficial, we have generally, in terms of what I mentioned in the beginning, we prepare students for the workforce. Now, in terms of the classes that I teach, I have a mixed group of students. So I have our traditional students and I have our non-traditional students, and primarily some of them are more mature students. So we have students who are returning to do a certification or just to upskill in order to change career paths, second career options, and so forth. So, in using the artificial intelligence tools and some of the settings that I showed you, we are using industry tools that are current and that the students will actually be using when they enter the workforce. So I keep repeating that because it is the model that we have at the college, right? So we are having students leave our classroom to the workforce. Now, in terms of the emerging technology that we have, right? We have updated systems and the tools that are available to the students to use. These are tools that are current and are being used in industry. Additionally, so the framework that I showed earlier that we use as part of this research is a framework that is currently being used in industry. So students are seeing in terms of measurable items that they can use, they have that as part of their curriculum. So some of the alignment that we have with the curriculum, we are using these alignments to prepare the students and measure how they are progressing throughout the course, right? So these are some of the things that we wanted to highlight. They are learning industry skills using industry benchmarks. So it is not that we are only teaching them how to do these tasks and complete these tasks successfully, but they are doing it in a way that they are aligning with the industry standards that are required for them to successfully grow in their careers and to enter the careers as well. Because sometimes, and in terms of our student population, generally they are entering at an entry level or mid level in their career field. And lastly, we are developing practical skills while the students are working on real world projects. So I mentioned that we have different companies that we create, fictitious companies that is, and we are doing business cases that the students are able to participate in these projects, working as different team members, and they are able to present their data, present their configuration, and they can test it based on how the function should be completed. So as part of our class, we have different projects that the students will choose from, and then we use these as part of the build up for the configuration and for the testing. So generally, we are looking at our network configuration and network security. So it falls under the cybersecurity umbrella. And I want to thank you for connecting today. This is my contact information. And as I mentioned before, if you would like to connect with me to go through a demo to actually see how we do some of the live configuration, I would be more than happy to do so. And I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions. And on that note, I want to say thanks again for watching this session, which is a part of the Global Impact Virtual Conference that is hosted by ISTE community leaders. And please connect to some of the other sessions and follow us on social media. So you can use the hashtag ISTE Global or ISTE Community on social media. So that is ISTE Global or ISTE Community on social media. So it's hashtag ISTE Global, hashtag ISTE Community. And thank you. And please do enjoy the rest of the conference. And again, if you have any questions, if you would like to connect with me, if you would like to connect for the demo, you can reach out to me and I would be more than happy to connect and do so. Thank you.